Welcome to today's episode of the Declutter Hub podcast, your channel for super easy, no-nonsense advice on how to declutter and organise your home. Please welcome your hosts, professional organisers Ingrid Jansen and Lesley Spellman.
Hello and welcome listeners to episode 60 of the Declutter Hub podcast. I'm Ingrid.
And I'm Lesley.
If you have clutter and want to sort it out, this is the show for you. As well as the free resources on our declutterhub.com website, like the podcast, checklists, and guest blogs, we also have an exclusive area where we guide our members step by step to declutter their homes. We realize this can be very overwhelming, so we're there every step of the way with courses, live Q&As, and a community discussion. Take a look on members.declutterhub.com. In today's episode, Lesley and I will be talking about how to declutter and organize your hallway so you can come home to the hallway of your dreams. We're talking about the visible clutter you see in hallways, not hallway cupboards. Everything gets dumped in the hallway, and before you know it, you're stepping over shoes, coats, and other random stuff every time you come in. Now, Lesley, hallways are a magnet for clutter, aren't they?
They definitely are. You know, I was thinking about it when we talked about doing this podcast because it's one of the most requested things that we get, isn't it? So we, whether that's in our members area and we're asking like, what do you want us to write a course on or something like that, or requests for podcasts, people are always like, do one about hallways, do one about hallways. And they're quite a tricky thing to discuss really, because everyone's hallways definitely come in all different shapes and sizes, don't they? With lots of different types of storage areas and storage solutions and things like that. So as you said in the beginning, what we're talking about now, we're not talking about understairs cupboards, because obviously that's an integral part of many people's hallways. We're talking very much just about the entryway really, aren't we?
Yes. I can't wait to do this podcast because my hallway is tiny as well. And I always have a bit of hallway envy when I go in other people's houses and they've got this really nice hallway. And I'm like, oh, I wish I had a hallway like that.
Because I think the important thing is, as soon as you walk into your home, if there's loads and loads of visible clutter as soon as you walk in, it's a little bit soul destroying, isn't it? You're already on a little bit of a downer before you even go into your house. So it's really important to try and keep that under control if you can.
If you open a door and you have to kind of climb over things and you already got your hands full of stuff with stuff you've carried from the car or from work or from picking up the kids from school, and you kind of immediately see all this clutter around, you're like, oh gosh, I can really imagine that it really sets people off kind of going, oh no.
Exactly. And you say something very interesting there, which is that we tend to enter our hallways when we're really, really tired. So it's going to be at the end of something. It's going to be at the end of a journey with the kids. It's going to be at the end of a work day. It's going to be when we come in from a night out. And so generally, quite often when we arrive home, we're kind of tired, not always, but often. And that's a really important factor in the way that we actually deal with our hallways, isn't it? Because we're so tired that we've not got the energy to do what we need to do when we come in to keep them in tip-top condition, really. I think that's the point.
Yeah, I think you're right. We open the door, we kind of plonk stuff down, and we kind of think, I'll do that later. I'll get around to it. Let me first sit down, have a cup of tea or whatever. Then you get sidetracked by other things that happen in life. And then it kind of gets worse and worse, doesn't it?
So those emotions and habits are big, aren't they, in hallways, in terms of our emotional well-being when we walk in the door and making sure that our homes are inviting places to be. Procrastination is absolutely prevalent in hallways because we're tired. We walk through the door and we'll do something later. So those are the two main things, aren't they, involved in hallways?
So it's not only your own clutter that you see and that you feel worried about, but you also, I think about what other people feel about your house when they see a very cluttered hallway. If it's a neighbor or a friend coming around, if your hallway is messy, then you might worry about how they feel about you and the rest of your house. And you want your house to be inviting for other people to come around. I think that's really important as well.
Yeah, and that's a really key emotion, isn't it, in decluttering? Most people who've lived a cluttered life or have clutter in their homes, albeit temporarily, have been judged. And so that's a big thing that we see. People feel judged all the time by the state of their homes. So that's why it's really important to try and get the first impression to other people right, if you can. So that takes away that judgment from other people. It's not right that people are judging you, but if you can do something to avoid that, then that's going to make you feel a little bit better. It's kind of a chicken and an egg thing, really, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
There was one other thing that I wanted to talk about in terms of our habits with hallways. There's this strange thing, and we all do it, don't we? Which is we put things in hallways, which is on the way out of the home to remind us to do jobs, you know? So whether that's letters to post, whether it's dry cleaning to do, whether it's school letters to take back to school, that kind of thing. What we do is we also put those things in our hallways to remind us to do something with them. But then what happens is it becomes part of the furniture. We don't see it anymore. So what we intend to be a visual reminder no longer is. And then it becomes clutter because we don't do what we're supposed to do with the stuff because we don't see it anymore because it's part of the rest of the clutter. So if that's happening to you and those visual reminders are not working, which to be fair, that is a big part of what we see, isn't it, in hallways when we're working with people, that there are a lot of outstanding chores still sitting in hallways. And so they don't work. The visual reminders don't work. You've got to find a different way of doing that, whether that's a written list, whether that's an email list, whether it's a reminder on your phone. You know, people use voice reminders. There's loads and loads of different things to remind you to do those things. So putting things in hallways is not always the best way, but it's a very, very common way.
Yes, absolutely. Plastic bags with shoes to go to the cobblers, library books being buried under coats and scarves and hats. I mean, you name it. We found it in hallways, haven't we? So we've seen this every day with our clients, and the hallway has a massive impact of people coming into your home, but also when you want to leave in the morning, trying to find something and trying to get ready. It's really important to have that hallway decluttered and organized.
Definitely. I think that takes us nicely on to decluttering, really, because this is an interesting one. Because actually, in my opinion, decluttering is not the main thing that needs to be done in hallways. It's much more about routines and habits and tidying up than it is decluttering. I'm not saying you never do any decluttering in a hallway, but what I am saying is mostly it's about putting things away. Would you agree, Ingrid?
Of course, when you tidy up a hallway for the first time, if you haven't tidied up in a long time, you will definitely find items there that you think, oh my goodness, what is this doing here? This should have been dealt with or done or returned or whatever. But if you then keep on top of things, then it will much more become a routine and habit.
Yeah, and the interesting thing is as well, in order to be able to tidy things away, the rest of your house has to be categorized and organized. I think it's always interesting when we go to clients, people, when we say, oh, where would you like to start? People tend to want to start in those areas that are going to be seen by other people. And so hallways and lounges and living rooms are the ones that people always want to start in. When in actual fact, we know as organizers, that's not the most efficient way of doing things. The more efficient way of doing things is to create space in the rest of the house where there are storage options around, to put the things that are in the lounge and in the hallway away. What you'll find is that a hallway is quite a difficult place to work with because you've not already designated a place for everything, and then you can put everything in its place. And so it's an interesting one, isn't it? Because you'll find a lot of unfinished business if you start with your hallway. So even though it's really important and people want to do that because of the impact that it has on other people and how they're judged, and I completely get that, actually there's a much more efficient way of doing things.
I do tidy up on a very regular basis, and I have kind of 2 moments in the year when I kind of do a tidy routine decluttering job, and it's when I swap my coats for the winter and then back in the autumn for this, or in the spring for the summer. So that's my time when I sort some stuff out and I kind of sort out my hallway. And because I do that on a regular basis all the time, and I've got that routine, I can keep track of everything that's in my hallway. And because it looks much neater, it doesn't become a dumping ground.
So if you were going to declutter things, if you're going to do a decluttering project in a hallway, how would you go about that?
Well, I would first start with categorizing the items. So I would put the coats together, and either by person or by season, depending on what's in there. Then I would put hats and scarves and gloves together. I would make a pile with summer things. So sunglasses, sun cream, baseball hats, things like that that you use over the summer. And I would probably gather all the paper together, anything post that has gone random in your hallway. And then you probably have an umbrella collection that you can put together, and things like bags and plastic bags. So I would categorize them, and then through each category, I would sort it through and go, right, what of this stuff is actually still current, what are we using, what is either been outgrown or has been overused and needs to be recycled, or what is rubbish and needs to be thrown away, what can be recycled. So I would do it per category because I think it's better. If you have a lot of coats, you might want to go ahead and go, right, what's the upcoming season, and take out your, for example, here 2 weeks ago, we're going into winter now. So now the summer coats are being taken out, they're being put in the wash. So that's my system. So I don't leave them year round on my coat rack. I've only got the coats that are for the right season. So rain jackets, winter coats. And then in the spring, of course, I got my summer jackets out, and I make sure that I dry clean or wash my winter coats. So that's how I do it.
Talking about coats then, I've got an interesting question for you, Ingrid. What do you think about coat stands?
If it's a small hole, I would definitely, if you can, put a coat rack on, something on the wall. Preferably something that has, if you're really tight on space, I would say take something with a shelf so you can put a basket or 1 or 2 baskets on top. If you have a really large hallway, I think then you can go for a coat stand, because then you can actually walk around the coat stand and grab the jackets. But if you've got a tiny hallway, I think a loose coat stand is not preferable. I would rather do something hooks on the wall. If it gets small children, I would also say have lower hooks on the lower part of the wall so the children can put their coats on the coat rack or the coat hooks themselves. So it's not, as soon as they can kind of open and close their coat and put their coat back on, they can also take it off the hooks and put it on themselves and put it back when they come back in. So they don't drop it on the floor all the time. So I have hooks that are lower, and I've got hooks that are higher for the adults.
So you're the kind of professional organizer, Ingrid. So my answer to my own question was, I absolutely hate with a passion coat stands. And the reason why, I do talk about hate, which is quite a strong word, I guess, but because all they become, so you see them in the shops and they look beautiful. They're pieces of art, really. They're almost like sculptures sometimes. Some of them are anyway. So they're either ornate and Victorian or they're modern and cool and so on. But actually what they become is just this mound of coats. Mm-hmm. So the only time that a coat stand to me works is for people coming in. Yeah, so guests coming in to hang their coats up, not for family coats. And I know not everyone's got the option to do that. I know that. But I suppose what I'm saying is preferably go for, as Ingrid has said, a coat rack with hooks side by side on the wall, and get as many hooks in there as you possibly can. If you can get them on 2 levels, then that's even better. But a coat stand is definitely something to steer clear of if you're more of a messy person, or if you've got loads and loads of coats, because they just don't work. And they fall over and they just don't look good. Once you put more than 2 or 3 coats on a coat stand, it does not look like a beautiful coat stand.
That is true. Maybe I've never had a hallway that could actually have a coat stand. My hallways have always been tiny, so I'm like, ooh, if I ever get a big house, I'm gonna get a coat stand.
Exactly. I mean, I suppose I'm like, and I've got in my hall, I've got quite a nice big hallway, to be fair, and it's got like a front end which is quite clear, and then I've got a back part of the hallway which has got one of those Victorian coat stands, so it's still quite flat and not a round one. Mm-hmm. But that gets full of coats as well. But I spend my time taking those coats and putting them elsewhere. But I am lucky, that I'm lucky with the space that I've got, because I've got multiple places to put coats. Mm-hmm. I can put them in wardrobes, I've got a room at the back and so on. But my one big bugbear, my huge bugbear, is people putting coats on banisters. It's like, no, don't put the coat on the banister. And so, but we all do it, don't we? And in my house, I'm like, you can put them there, and there, but you've chosen to put them on the banister. Why is that? Do you know what I mean? I think they just do it to wind me up. I'm not going to lie. So anyway, so yeah, coat stands, they look beautiful in the shop. They look like a great idea, but actually standard, straightforward, hooks on the wall are much better.
So have you got a routine then, Lesley? Do you also swap your summer and winter coats, and do you tidy it away like I do? Or how does it work in your house then?
Yeah, I've got a kind of, as I said, I've got a couple of places that I can put coats really. So I've got like a back utility room which has got a lot of coat storage, and then I've got my kind of hallway one which I want to keep quite clear. So that's where all the shoes get kicked off when they come in the house, and that's where the coats come. But what happens on there is, as I'm tidying the kitchen, if people have left a random hoodie around, that'll get put on the coat stand. When people come in from football, those kind of things get. So over the course of the week, there's a lot of different coats that go on there. So, and I used to do this much more regularly when all the kids were at home, but now there's only really me and Nathan and my husband. So probably once a week, then I will go through those coats and I'll take out the ones that I don't want on there to leave 4 or 5 on their max. Does that make sense? And so, yeah, definitely once a week, I'm trying to avoid that huge kind of mound of coat situation, because they can just build up, can't they?
Yeah, definitely. I try to kind of have a little rain jacket, kind of a hoodie, and then they're either their summer or their winter coat. So that's kind of the year-round things. And for me as well, a rain jacket, a summer coat, and maybe a kind of a nice coat. And then now it's being swapped over for a winter coat, but the raincoat stays. I have a wardrobe upstairs where I actually put the summer or the winter coats depending on the season. And
because we do tend to have coats that we wear really regularly, don't we, in each season, that we just stick on every day, and most people do in the family. And then you've got other coats that you might pull on for special occasions or for specific things. And so there is definitely that 20-80 rule, isn't there, with coats, for good reason, really. So yeah, but you do need to have a routine to keep those coats under control and to move things around. Not many people can keep all of the coats for the whole family in the hallway.
no, definitely not. And especially if you're very limited on space, I would say keep only your daily used coats there, and everything that you don't wear on a regular basis needs to live somewhere else. Because if you're a family of 4 or 5 or maybe even 6, and you've got so much going on in the hallway, and you might also need a place for their school backpack and maybe the pair of daily shoes. If you've got lots of everything going on, then immediately it becomes so messy. And then it's easier just to dump stuff, and it becomes a dumping ground, doesn't it?
It does. You know what? And we're never, ever going to achieve that magazine-worthy hallway that we see. You know, there's that hallway and they've got one coat hung up, you know, and one little pair of shoes and a little backpack on a cute little hook. That's not real life, is it? Real life is, you've got however many kids, they've got all these things, they're kicking the shoes off, there's trainers, there's plimsolls, there's loads and loads of stuff, isn't there? And all these different coats, and keeping that under control is quite the job, really. You know, we want those things in our hallway to be to hand in the morning, particularly if you've got young kids and you've got to get them out to school. And so we did another podcast, didn't we, about a command center. So this is not a command center in the kitchen, but I think we spoke about in that podcast, sometimes that command center, which is a bit of a fancy word really, but it's a kind of action station almost, a place that you grab things that you're going to need regularly then. That's often in our hallways, especially in the winter when it's hats and scarves and football kits and dancing shoes and swimming kits and all those things. If you haven't got the benefit of an understairs cupboard, might often be in some hooks or in some boxes or some storage in your hallway.
Very true. I always make sure that my sports equipment is upstairs because my hallway is not big enough, and I don't want to put it in my downstairs cupboard because I've got other stuff that's more important in my opinion. So swim kit and dance kit and cheerleading kit and all of those things live upstairs in a designated area where everybody can find it, and where it's easy when it's dry, it gets put back in there, and when it comes back in, I make sure it goes into the wash. And I think for me, how you have got such a thing about coat stands, Lesley, for me, I think it's very important that coats get washed. At the end of a season, even if you're going to give them away to other people, you need to wash them first. If you're going to give them away to the charity shop, give them a wash and then give them away. And then also at that time, as soon as it's clean, have a look at the size. Will this be able to fit next year? If you know it was already on the tight side, they're not going to get use of it next year, then it immediately goes into the charity shop. But if I see so many people want to clear out their hallways and the sleeves are really dirty and they haven't been washed at all, I think it's really important that you wash your coats after a whole season.
It's definitely something that gets neglected, isn't it? And in terms of organisation, I think one of the key things to do in a hallway, if you've got the possibility, and as we said right at the beginning of the podcast, hallways definitely come in all different shapes and sizes. If you can get covered storage, like ottomans, boxes, things that you can put stuff into, where it's a little bit contained and covered, that's going to be better. But sometimes you have to compromise on accessibility. So it's what's important. Is it more important for things to be accessible, or is it more important to you that things look neat and tidy? Hallways are all about compromise, aren't they, for most people? First of all, more than anything else, what you need to do is you need to make sure you've got that routine where you're going through that hallway and you're putting things away on a very, very regular basis. The last thing that I wanted to say really about hallways is that I do have in my hallway a basket to put things away into. So if I find things in my house that belong elsewhere in the house, quite often people have got stair baskets. Mine's not a stair basket because stair baskets are not that big. And so mine's a basket where I'll put things in, and it might be shoes that are going to go upstairs. It might be something that needs to go in the washing basket upstairs. It could be anything in there. It could be a lipstick that came out of my handbag that I no longer need. It could be a pair of earrings that I took off on the work surface. All go in the basket, and then with regularity, the stuff out of that basket gets taken to the room that it belongs in. So that's another thing you can do that definitely helps with the clutter. And so if my kids then come to me and say, Mum, where's this? Well, it's either in your room or it's in the basket. Because that's the way, we're reasonably meticulous, as you might expect, hopefully, of a professional organizer. So there's only two places that it can be. If I've tidied my kitchen, then it's either going to be in that basket waiting to go upstairs, or it's going to be upstairs in your room. Incorporating a stair basket or some kind of container to collect things that have been misplaced is also a really, really useful thing to have in your hallway.
Yeah, on that note, I think what I really want to share with our listeners, don't put it down, put it away. When you come in, even if you're tired, hang up your coat immediately. Place your shoes where you want your shoes to live. Pick up the post from the mat and put it on the desk if that's where you normally do your post and read your post, or bring it into the kitchen or wherever you open your post. So don't wait for it, and then 11 o'clock at night you want to close the front door and you're like, oh my gosh, I haven't even gotten around to putting my coat on the right hook. And then in the morning it's a scramble because you can't find things because things haven't been put back in the right place. So if it takes less than a minute or two to do it there and then, and not leave it till later, because then you leave a trail of stuff around your house of things you're going to do later. And that's when you get the chaos going on. So that really helps in getting into a more organized way of thinking. And if you do the same thing every day, you're not being boring. You're being smart, because you're not losing time and energy and effort of hunting around for the stuff that you need the next day. So I think systems and routines can sometimes sound very boring, but for me, I think I am saving so much time. This is good.
Absolutely. You save so much time by spending, you and I, we talk all the time on the podcast about reset times. And so I've got my reset times in a day where everything I have to troll around in a boring, methodical way, putting things away. But it saves you so much time in the long run, because you know where everything is, and it doesn't become this mammoth chore at the weekend.
Yeah.
It's just to spend 20 minutes in the morning just putting a wash on, blah, 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 putting things away, putting things in the dishwasher, all those kind of things. And it saves you so much time.
Yeah.
But it can be, but you need some energy and focus to decide to do that every day. To me, it's completely second nature, and to many people it is, but to some people it's not, and you have to start to change habits gradually.
Point very well made, Lesley. Is there anything else you want to add before we kind of close this podcast? I think we've got everything, haven't we?
Did I make it clear that we shouldn't be using coat stands?
Yeah. Yes, you've made
Can
that
I say it again?
Yeah. You hate a coat stand. Yes, Lesley.
Okay.
I think our listeners realize this now.
Because they should be a thing of beauty, but they're not, because they're just piled high with coats, aren't they? So
listen, listeners all over the world are going, oh my gosh, I've got a coat stand. This is not good. Lesley will throw it away when she comes to my house.
I know. Coat stand queen. Yeah, exactly. Right.
Well, I remember recently you having a coat stand in your thing that you actually decluttered. So you've actually made good on the promise of yourself that you decluttered it. So
I did.
Yeah.
But I didn't have it for coats. To be fair, I did not have it for coats.
Yeah, true.
It was for handbags.
Yeah. Anyway, listeners, Are you going to tidy up your hallway? Is this maybe a little weekend job? Can you maybe do a little bit this week? Are you going to be putting away your coat now on a daily basis because you are inspired by our routines and our habits? We really hope so, because we hope that you learn and are inspired to take action. So thank you so much for taking the time to listen today. And if you've enjoyed this podcast, please leave a review and tell us what you think about the show. If you'd like to get more tips and advice, please follow us on social media. We are on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook as @declutterhub. And we have a lovely, lively, supportive Facebook group where we chat all things clutter. You can search for the Declutter Hub community, and we'd love to see you there. Take a look at members.declutterhub.com to find out more about our membership. If you don't want to miss the next weekly episode, please subscribe to the Declutter Hub podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, and iHeartRadio. And it will pop into your notifications each Friday. See you next time.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode of the Declutter Hub podcast. Check out declutterhub.com for more inspiration, and don't forget to tune in next week.